All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something that gets a pretty bad rap, statistics. You know, that third thing in the very famous list of lies and damned lies. It's a field a lot of us look at with some serious suspicion, and today we're going to find out why.
We've all heard this one, right? It just perfectly sums up that gut feeling we get, that deep-seated mistrust when someone whips out a chart to prove a point in an argument. And that's a huge question, isn't it? When every single side of an issue has its own set of data, who are you supposed to believe? So let's dive in. Let's see if we can separate the real statistical facts from the fiction and maybe, just maybe, find a little bit of the magic in the numbers along the way.
So first things first, we've got to acknowledge the problem. There's a real crisis of trust here. And it's not just with the news or politics. It's happening right in the heart of science itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big deal. The whole foundation of science is that if you do an experiment here, someone else should be able to do it over there and get the same result. But that's not always what's happening. And look, this usually isn't about outright fraud. It's something a lot more subtle, what people call questionable research practices, which often come from this crazy pressure to publish these big, headline-grabbing results.
And just take a look at this. These numbers are from scientists admitting what they do. I mean, more than half of them said they've selectively reported studies that worked, or they peeked at the results and then decided to collect more data to push it over the line. Now, these aren't necessarily people trying to be malicious, but these are choices, and these choices can unintentionally steer the results toward what they want to find.
And this leads to this brilliant idea called the garden of forking paths. Just picture it. A researcher gets a bunch of data, and at every single step, how they clean the data, which variables they look at, what kind of statistical tests they run, they have to make a choice. And each choice is like a fork in a path. If you take a few different turns, you can end up in a completely different place with a totally different conclusion, all from the same initial data. So the key takeaway here is that it's not always about bad guys. It's often a system that kind of lets our own biases sneak in without us even realizing it.
Okay, but being skeptical without any tools, that's just cynicism, and that doesn't help anyone. So let's get ourselves some tools. We're going to open up the black box and look at a couple of really simple but super powerful techniques that'll help us all see what the data is really saying.
First up, index numbers. Now, I know this sounds a little technical, but the idea is actually incredibly simple and so useful. It's just a way to compare the growth of different things, especially when their starting points are miles apart. All you do is you pick a start date, you call that 100, and then you see how everything else changes compared to that baseline.
So take this chart, for example. It's showing passenger travel. And at first glance, what do you see? You just see the cars are, well, everything. That bar is so huge it totally dominates the picture. You can barely even register what's going on with rail and air.
But what if the most important question isn't who's the biggest? What if it's who's growing the fastest? See, just by reframing the question, we can uncover a totally different story.
And bam! There it is. This is the exact same data, just indexed. By setting 1970 as our starting point of 100 for all three, we suddenly see the real trends. Yeah, car travel grew for sure. But look at air travel. It absolutely exploded, growing more than 4 times over. Indexing just revealed a massive story that was completely invisible before.
All right, tool number 2, adjusting for inflation. This one is huge, and you see people get it wrong all the time. We all get it intuitively, right? $100 today doesn't buy what $100 bought 20 years ago. And when we forget that simple fact and just look at the raw numbers, we can get a really warped view of what's actually happening.
Just check this out. It's a look at policing costs in the UK. Now, if you look at the nominal terms, that's just the raw cash, the numbers on the spreadsheet, it looks like spending went up 17%. Great, right? But when we adjust for inflation to see what that money could actually buy in terms of police officers, cars, equipment, spending actually fell by 13%. I mean, these are two completely opposite stories from the same data, and only one of them tells you what happened to the actual purchasing power.
So you see, things like indexing and adjusting for inflation show us that statistics isn't really about lying at all. It's a lens. It's a tool for seeing the world with more clarity. And this brings us to this huge gap between the myth of statistics and, well, its magic.
Yeah, on one side, you've got the myth that statistics is just boring mechanical number crunching, a deceptive tool used to trick people. But the magic, the reality, is that it's a voyage of discovery. It's the science of dealing with uncertainty and pulling real, useful information out of a sea of noise.
I absolutely love this quote from the legendary statistician John Tukey. It just perfectly captures the excitement of it all. Statistics isn't some dusty, narrow subject. It's like a backstage pass to explore everything. You can play in everyone's backyard, from climate science to medicine to finance. It's where you go to find out what's really going on.
But maybe the single biggest myth we need to bust is this idea that statistics is all about the average person, faceless crowds. That's the old way of thinking. The new reality, modern statistics, is intensely personal. It's becoming less about the group and a whole lot more about, well, you.
Okay, so we've looked at the problem of why we don't trust numbers, and we've got a couple of tools to think more clearly. Now, let's look at the incredible promise of where this is all going, and, the huge responsibility that comes with all this power.
I mean, just think about your own life. Your credit score? That's not a guess about the average person. It's a statistical prediction about your financial risk. The movies Netflix recommends? They're not for everybody. They're tailored specifically to your viewing habits. And the future of medicine is all about this. Not what drug works on average, but which one is going to work best for the next patient. For you. In every one of these cases, data from millions of people is being used to make a super specific, personalized decision about one individual.
And this is the world we live in now. Statistics is the engine running under the hood of, well, almost everything. It's not good, it's not bad, any more than fire or electricity is good or bad. It's just powerful. It's an incredibly powerful tool. So the goal isn't to be cynical and just throw our hands up. The goal is to be critical, to be curious, and to be wise about how we use and interpret this stuff.
Because at the end of the day, the data is everywhere. It's not going anywhere. The real question, the challenge for all of us in this age of information is, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to use it to understand our world and each other a little better?